Move in a little bit closer, and maybe our speakers can stand right here. Perfect. I'm going to get all of you in the shot. All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for being here today. We will be joined by some members of Congress as we go along, and I'll introduce them as they come. We are also joined by Barbara Lead from Microsoft, Aaron Saadian from Well Paid Maids, Philip Connor from Forward, and Kareem Baltazar from Fireland Workers Action, and all of the activists and advocates from People's Action and from CASA. I am so glad to have everyone here to lift up the contributions of immigrants to the United States of America. I am Pramila Jayapal. I'm the ranking member of the Immigration Subcommittee on the Judiciary Committee. And I'm also here as chair of the Progressive Caucus, as vice chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, and as a proud immigrant. Too often, immigrants are used as a political football. We see it almost daily here with xenophobic language that is used in committee rooms, in legislation, and on the House floor. The other side of the aisle has preferred to use chaos to fuel their campaigns rather than work towards real bipartisan solutions. But friends, it's time to push back on that narrative and give the true story of immigration in America. Immigrants built this country. Immigrants power this economy. And that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. Today, we're going to hear from members as well as businesses, large and small, who will tell their own stories of why immigrants are so important to America. And we'll also talk about the hard data that proves that immigrants help American communities, not hurt them, as so many try to say all the time. While extremists and far-right commentators might have you believe that immigrants are a drain on the economy, the numbers, the facts, the data refute that point. It does not matter if we are talking about undocumented immigrants or family-based immigration or employment-based immigration. Immigrants help drive our economy. In 2021 alone, undocumented immigrants paid approximately $18.6 million in federal income taxes and $12.2 billion in state and local taxes. And also in 2021, immigrants on DACA paid $6.5 billion in taxes. Refugees paid almost $28 billion in taxes. TPS holders paid $2.2 billion in taxes. And the Department of Health and Human Services recently released a study demonstrating that refugees and asylees generated $124 billion in fiscal benefits over 15 years. A recent Congressional Budget Office report, a nonpartisan report, showed that immigrants joining the workforce will add $1 trillion in revenue to our country's GDP between 2023 and 2034. It is estimated that putting undocumented immigrants on a pathway to citizenship would not only increase our GDP by 1.7 trillion over the next decade, that action would also raise wages for all Americans and create hundreds of thousands of new jobs. I could list statistics all day, but the fact of the matter is immigrants build up our economy and contribute immensely to our communities that we all call home. And immigrants not only kept the economy running on the front lines of the pandemic, farm workers, healthcare workers, so many others kept our economy running and rebuilt the labor force as we emerged. Thanks to President Biden, we have the lowest unemployment rate in over 50 years, and we have the strongest economic recovery in the world. Employers need workers in every single field today, and migrants who are coming here for work are ready to work. If we authorize more money for quicker processing, if we update our old and outdated immigration system so that it meets the needs of our economy, our communities, and our family today, we would actually be able to get the full benefit of immigrant contributions to our workforce. But it's not just the workforce. Immigrants have helped to reinvigorate communities that were once in decline, breathing new life into cities and towns across this country. This conversation is personal to me. I am an immigrant born in India. I came to this country alone at the age of 16, with nothing in my pockets and just the dreams of my parents that I could have a better life and more opportunity here. And I'm proud to stand before you as the first and only still South Asian American woman elected to Congress, and somebody who is deeply committed to making sure that the opportunities that I had get paid forward for undocumented immigrants, for migrants, for refugees, and for workers everywhere. My parents sacrificed to send me here, and I think that every one of us wants to do what it takes to give back and to make a better life for the people we love. That is the promise of America. But the path to citizenship is not an easy one. It's incredibly complicated, it's outdated, it can take years. We have seen that there is an inverse relationship between the legal pathways that we offer to people and people that show up at the border. The more legal pathways we can offer, the fewer people will be used by unscrupulous actors like drug cartels and told that they can pay a bucket of money if they just go to the border. The fewer legal pathways that people have, the more they will continue to come to the border. The border has become the main way that people feel that they can get into this country because we're still operating with a legal immigration system that has visa caps and other totals for the legal immigration system as we had 30 years ago. We haven't updated them, even though the population of the world has almost doubled from 4.9 billion in 1986 to 8 billion today. But it is clear that attempts to limit immigration and shut down the border only hurt this country. When Texas Governor Greg Abbott implemented a border, quote, slowdown over 9 days in April of 2022, it resulted in Texas losing approximately $4.2 billion and the equivalent of 36,000 jobs. So let's not separate what immigrants do for this country from the need that we have to provide a legal immigration system that works. Immigrants are good for our economy. They're good for our country. They're good for our communities. They are good for our families. Immigrants contribute every single day. It is time to reform our broken immigration system. It's time to welcome and respect the contributions of immigrants, and it's time to stop using us as a political football. Let's get real solutions done. Let's fix the immigration system. Let's make our economy better. Let's make our families better. Let's make our country better. With that, I'm really pleased to turn it over to Barbara Lean, Senior Corporate Counsel at Microsoft, headquartered in my state. We're so proud that Microsoft has been a huge engine of the economy in our state, across the country, and also deeply respectful of the need for immigration reform. Barbara?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Congresswoman Jayapal and the rest of the speakers here today and supporters. At Microsoft, we employ thousands of immigrants of all skill sets in every aspect of our business. Our immigrant employees are creating new innovations in artificial intelligence. They're building cutting-edge products that help solve big societal problems and are sharpening our competitive edge. These contributions are building economic strength for all Americans. We have employees who have moved here from more than 140 different countries. They include lawful permanent residents, high-skilled immigrants on the path to a green card, and dreamers. We believe that the diversity of our employees is one of our greatest strengths. Employees like Joel Marquez, a senior software engineer at Microsoft and a dreamer. Joel came to America when he was 8. He calls Colorado home. And with Microsoft's support, he is now a lawful permanent resident. Over the past 4 years, Microsoft's immigrant employees helped the United States keep working during the COVID-19 pandemic, building and maintaining the tools that allowed us all to stay connected. Now we are at another important inflection point, as critical emerging technologies like artificial intelligence are creating new technology sectors that have significant potential for the American economy. At Microsoft, we know that we need to bring together the best and the brightest minds to meet this moment. And we can't do that without immigrants. Unfortunately, businesses and immigrants are facing an increasingly unworkable system. If we fail to recognize the importance of immigrants to our nation, we are failing to realize our full economic potential, and we put our global competitive edge at a significant risk. I'm proud to work for a company that understands the value of people from all places and backgrounds, and I'm so grateful for the incredible contributions that immigrants make to our industry, economy, and our country. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Barbara. And next, it's my great honor to introduce somebody who's been a real partner to me as the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, a real champion for immigrants and immigration her entire career and here in Congress, Representative Nanette Barragan from California.
Well, thank you very much, Representative Jayapal, and to everybody here today. When we talk about immigrants in today's day and age, especially our MAGA Republican colleagues, they attempt to vilify our immigrants to fuel a political campaign at every turn. They're not about solutions. They really are about using this as a campaign issue. Earlier last month, we heard from the CBO a study covering America's GDP increase. They said in our projections, the deficit is also smaller than it was last year because economic output is greater, partially as a result of more people working. The labor force in 2033 is larger by 5.2 million people, mostly because of higher net immigration. Let me say that again, because of net immigration. As a result of these changes in the labor force, we estimate that from 2023 to 2034, GDP will be greater by about $7 trillion, and revenues will be greater by about $1 trillion than they would have been otherwise. We are continuing to assess the implications of immigration for revenues and spending. And I wanted to bring that up because of the fact that we don't talk about the impacts, the positive economic impacts that our immigrants bring to this community, because my colleagues across the aisle are only worried about a campaign. They're worried about vilifying. Yet when you talk to some of them individually behind closed doors, they themselves will tell you about them hiring immigrants. We can't talk about it because they're in the red states. But our immigrants are our people. They're our friends. They're our neighbors. They're our family. And they add not just to the value of this country, because we are built on a nation of immigrants, but the economic impacts. Now, Republicans these days, everything out of their mouth is a lie, and we have a duty and responsibility to fact check them and to correct them. Republicans say immigrants are stealing American jobs, but data shows immigrants are creating jobs, and they're the ones starting new businesses and entrepreneurships. Republicans say immigrants hurt the U.S. economy, but as I just read, data shows that immigrants will add nearly $1 trillion to the economy this year. Republicans say immigrants are here for handouts, but data shows immigrants pay more than $90 billion in yearly taxes and only receive $5 billion in any benefits. You have to ask yourself, why is the hateful and false rhetoric used by Republicans so different than the facts? It's really quite simple. It's because Republicans are willing to lie. We've seen that, whether it's democracy, whether it's because of immigrants, they're willing to lie about the positive impact. They don't want to recognize the positive impact that immigration has on America simply because they're worried about their political agenda. Just recently, Tyson Foods, which produces 20% of the nation's beef, chicken, and pork, said that Tyson's employs 42,000 immigrants, and they would like to hire 42,000 more immigrants. And we know we've heard in the business community about the need of the more workers and the shortage that we have of workers to fill Americans' companies because they need them. We also saw a study from MIT. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology had a study that shows that 80% of immigrants are more likely to start a business. This result shows that immigration yields the net gain in job availability, contrary to belief and the false narrative that we're hearing out there. about immigrants taking our jobs. So we have to continue not just to fact check them, but to talk about the facts and to talk about the numbers and to talk about the stories and sharing the stories of the work and the contributions that our immigrants play and have in this country. And again, I can't say it enough. We are a country of immigrants. And I think about my own parents. I think about our own family members. Our Republican friends, they don't want to do anything to address the situation. Even putting resources at the southern border, they don't want to see. We're going to continue to fight for comprehensive immigration reform. We're going to continue to fight for legal pathways. We're going to continue to fight for our immigrants, and we're going to continue to tell the story that our immigrants are the backbone of this country. We're a nation built of immigrants, and we got to continue to focus on the contributions and the values that our immigrants play in this country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Bargan. And now we want to hear from another business owner, the owner of Well-Paid Maids, Aaron Sayedian.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks to Representative Jayapal for having me here today. I am Aaron Sayedian. I'm the founder of Well-Paid Maids. We're a cleaning company that operates in DC, Maryland, Virginia, and New York. I'm also the son of an immigrant. My dad moved here from Iran in 1975, and one of my favorite stories about my dad was a little while after 9/11, we got a card in the mail from one of his old friends, and he was reading it out loud to us, and it basically said, I hope that you and your family have not experienced any hate due to recent events. And my dad started smiling, and he said, in the 25 years that I've been here, I can't think of a single time that I was discriminated against because of where I'm from. And that's not because he passes as a Native American, by the way, native-born American, but quite the opposite. And look, that's not the experience of every immigrant. That's why we're here today. Hatred towards immigrants is on the rise, and we need to stem that tide. But it was true for my dad. And it was true for my dad despite the Iran hostage crisis. It was true for my dad despite the axis of evil designation. And it wasn't just true in big cosmopolitan cities, but it was true in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Binghamton, New York in the 70s and 80s. And it was true in Dunkirk, New York, and Tonawanda, New York in the 90s and through today. If you haven't heard of those places, that's kind of the point. It speaks volumes about the tremendous character of the people of this country, and it's a testament to what makes this country great. And we can't lose that. But if we let xenophobia and racism control our nation and give in to this rising, old world, un-American hatred of the stranger, we risk becoming just another country. And in doing so, we'll lose great people and their great contributions. In my company, about half the employees are immigrants. El Salvador, Mexico, Pakistan, Bangladesh, just to name a few countries. I can tell you as an employer, their loss is our gain. Without exception, these folks want the same thing as native-born Americans. They want to pick up more shifts so they can support their families. They want to educate themselves so they can get a better life. And they want to prepare their children the best they can for the future. And while immigrants can be hard to talk about as a group because they're all different, right? Different places, different backgrounds. They do have a common spirit because of their decision to emigrate. These folks are friendly. They can't afford not to be. Newcomers in a strange land. They're optimistic. They thought that life would be better in another country. They thought that the future would be better than the past. And they're daring because not only did they think that, they acted on it and took a chance. And finally, I can tell you they are hard workers because they're here to make something of themselves and they're willing to do whatever it takes. Friendly, daring, optimistic, hardworking, those are American traits. And it's not an accident. We've always been a country of immigrants, and we risk losing what's special about this place if we turn our back on that heritage. Without immigrants, my company would be half as successful as it is now. The same is true for our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Now it's a great pleasure to introduce somebody who's been a champion from day one in Congress because she was a champion before in the state legislature in Illinois, Representative Delia Ramirez.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes. I got here a little later because I was on the House floor hearing my Republican colleagues say the same words they say that I will not repeat. the terrible anti-immigrant rhetoric that they use, while at the same time, I reminded them that on Cinco de Mayo, they're getting drunk on margaritas and going to various restaurants throughout the year where the cooks, the servers, and all the people around them are the same immigrants that they're attacking on that house floor every single day. And so as I was standing there, I was thinking of a song that I heard this morning that I listen to probably every single day. It's from the Hamilton play, Immigrants, We Get the Job Done. We have a message problem. And what the message problem is that the reality of the benefits of immigrants is not consistent with what we hear in this place. What we hear in this place is that immigrants are a problem, that immigration is an invasion. You just heard a number of my colleagues and you heard a business owner talk about the economic impact that immigrants have in this nation. 1 in 5 businesses started by immigrants. Our GDP growing, right, because of immigrants. $7 trillion directly to our economy. And if we fix the immigration problem, which by the way, we haven't done anything about since I was 3, and yes, it's not highlights, it's gray hair that you're seeing now, we would be able to extend Social Security by at least 40 years for everyone in this country. You see, when we knock on doors, and I knock every weekend back in Chicago in my district, what I hear people say when I ask them, what are you most concerned about? And you know what they say to me? It's the economy. It's the challenges we see every single day. And what I've realized is that if we would turn around this messaging and realize that immigrants are a solution to our economy, we wouldn't be here arguing in front of the Capitol, the same thing that so many have argued for decades. The reality is that this nation that was built for immigrants is a nation that decides to deny our existence and the impact it has on every single American. And it is why I think that us as Democrats have the ability with the president to show courage, to use executive powers in absence of congressional action, to show that when we have 9 million job openings in this country, as we're creating more jobs in this country, that people like Maximiliano Guerra, my uncle, who has been here for 35 years, are anxiously ready for that work permit to be able to generate even more revenue to this country. This is exactly why we're standing here today, because we are saying, not in our name, you will not denounce immigrants. Not in our name will we go back to a place where we criminalize people for seeking asylum. Not in our name. And not in our name will we say that Boris Hernandez, my husband, who is a dreamer, doesn't deserve to be in this country, who has been here since the age of 14. And this is exactly why, as a freshman with just a year and 3 months in Congress, I can tell you that as I look at that Capitol, I, the daughter of immigrants, of Maria Elvira Ramirez, who crossed the border pregnant with me in her first trimester, deserve to be there because immigrants deserve to be in the people's house. And it is our responsibility to stop making excuses and finally do the right thing, the smart thing, and actually move forward with comprehensive immigration reform, work permits, the solutions that our colleagues on the other side seem to not think about and just criminalize. That is the winning strategy. And that is why we're here today. Enough of the rhetoric. We're ready for solutions. Thank you. Gracias.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Now it's a great pleasure to introduce Philip Connor from Forward, a key partner in pushing for immigration reform and on the data.
Thank you, Representative. Great to be here. Good afternoon. The United States has experienced a triumphant economic turnaround in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as a demographer and an economic analyst, I think it's important that we recognize the vital role that immigrants have played in this recent success. A simple demographic truth is this: Our US workforce is aging, and quickly, and our working age population is not growing without immigrants. Let me say that again. Our working age population is not growing without immigrants. Moreover, we will need more legal immigration above the status quo to continue growing our labor force at the rate that we've enjoyed over the previous 2 decades. Immigration economically benefits every American. For example, we at Forward.us estimate that increasing immigration would lift the average annual income for everyday Americans by about $16,000 additional dollars by 2040 than if immigration were clawed back to the lower levels during the Trump administration. Even today, we are seeing the benefits of expanding legal immigration avenues. The administration's use of parole for immigrants, for instance, from countries like Ukraine and Afghanistan, among other countries, has allowed hundreds of thousands of newly arrived immigrants to join the workforce. These additions were essential when there was this historic moment of open jobs, which remain high today. In fact, we at Forward.us estimate that industries with critical labor shortages have welcomed 1.1 million workers through immigration parole, likely accounting for about a third of the reduction in labor shortages during the past couple years. This has meant significant savings for Americans' wallets from the costs of persistent inflation. Also, we know the number of international student enrollments are on the rise again in the US. We at Forward.us estimate that about 3/4 of these students would like to stay in the US following graduation if there is a straightforward pathway for them to work and live here. Many of these future graduates will have advanced degrees that can be used in critical emerging industries like AI and semiconductors. And at the same time, we should also unleash the full economic productivity of immigrants already living in the US, especially those who are undocumented. For instance, we know that if temporary protected status were to be expanded to several more countries, work authorized immigrants could more easily fill those jobs in short-handed industries. Undocumented spouses of US citizens could add 16 billion more to the US economy each year with immigration relief. And providing long overdue solutions for dreamers as their futures on DACA face dire threats in the courts could grow our US economy by a further 400 billion in the decade ahead. The US economy has been built through immigration, and immigration remains even more so the most viable economic and demographic solution for the years ahead. With immigrants, we have an opportunity to build an even more prosperous economic future, an economy that remains the envy of every nation of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're hearing about the contributions of immigrants in so many different arenas. Now I'd like to turn to another arena and invite Kareem Baltazar from Firelands Workers Action to speak.
Hello, my name is Kareem Baltazar. I am 22 years old. I am here with People's Action. I reside in Grace Harbor County, a rural area of Washington State. Our goal is to improve the living conditions along with creating more job opportunities in small towns just like the one I reside in. As an immigrant myself, I arrived in the United States at just over a week old. Despite having called this country home for decades, our family isn't treated fairly. We aren't respected, we are treated like criminals, and we have to work twice as hard to obtain our basic needs as humans. This country is what I call home. I pay taxes just like every other citizen. I graduated high school, I attended college, and now I have taken up the role to advocate and demand change and reform in our immigrant policies and really educate people to try and change their uneducated, biased opinions on immigration. According to a study done in 2001 by the American Immigration Council, immigrants make up around 13.6% of the population. Based on a study by the U.S. Department of Justice, immigrants account for sustainably lower crime rates than native-born citizens. It is simply untrue that immigrants come to this country seeking to take advantage and commit violent crimes. Instead, we come to this country to build a better life. It is time we are treated as full human beings. Now my question is, based on the studies conducted by our own government agencies, Why aren't we addressing immigration from educated statistics and accurate information? I think it's urgent to change our leaders, how our leaders are representing all people that reside in this country. This would help aid in making policies based on facts and statistics and ensure that we as the people of this country unite and advocate for the right causes. Instead of false stories about how immigrants are criminals, we need real changes to our laws that lift up immigrant families. In my hometown, there are many people who need their homes repaired and weatherized, and there is federal money available. But right now, we don't have enough people doing the work to meet the huge need. I know so many people who are interested and could be trained to do this work, but they don't have a work authorization because of our backwards federal immigration laws. We need thousands of good, green jobs to rebuild my community and thousands of communities across the country. And we need to make sure that these jobs are open to immigrants who want to get to work repairing the places we call home. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We probably have time for one, maybe two questions. So, yes.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for having all of these folks share their stories. You were speaking about the economic benefits. I'm curious, we're in the appropriations process. The president's budget just came out yesterday. Republicans are always trying to, you know, cut what they call entitlements. Can you think about when, immigrants make more money, when they're able to work these jobs, that it's a less burden for the federal government also, that it also benefits that argument that they often say that people are looking for handouts, that people are looking for the social safety net to be bigger than what it should be, that when folks are able to take care of themselves, they're less reliant on the federal government. Can you speak to that side of the coin?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I might ask Philip if he has anything to add. Look, I think what we've seen over and over again is that immigrants contribute into a system where they actually take very little out. And that is for a number of different reasons. People think that immigrants have access to all these safety net benefits. They actually don't, undocumented immigrants, but even some legal immigrants do not. And I think people don't realize, and Alan Greenspan said it like a decade ago, but even Social Security is propped up by the contributions of both undocumented and documented immigrants, because many undocumented immigrants pay into federal taxes and never receive the benefits for those payments. So we see it in terms of tax benefits. We see it in terms of what immigrants tend to draw from our safety net programs. And most of the time, if we could give immigrants the authority to work, I have a colleague across the aisle that I've been talking with about this, and he said, I wish we could just do this the way we used to do it at Ellis Island. I'm like, done, let's take it. Because when you used to come in at Ellis Island, you actually were able to work immediately. There was very little documentation or processing that was done. People got to work because immigrants are here. They want to have a legal pathway to be here. They are often joining families. They're often coming to work for employers. But we have these outdated quotas and caps. We have 8 million people that are in line just waiting for a family visa. We have over 2 million that are waiting in line just for an employment visa. And that's the legal process that we go through. So the contributions are well documented, despite what people try to make it seem like. Every single statistic that I've seen really shows how immigrants contribute far more than they might take from any programs that we have to offer. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I'll ask you. The National Academies has done research on this, on the fiscal benefits of immigrants, and it's a net positive in almost every instance. I would add also that when you be able to move, as Representative was just mentioning, from non-documented status to some other kind of legal status, we see these boosts to the economy that they're able to provide on the number of somewhere 15 to 20% on average of their income that they're actually contributing to the economy. Secondly, we know, for example, with temporary protected status, if that was expanded to more countries, there'd be a 5 billion boost instantly, almost instantly, to the economy because of the work permits that they would be able to accessible. So the benefits to be able to fiscally and for also the economy are just numerous if immigrants can be able to move from that undocumented status to potentially to a legal status at some time.
I'm going to say one more thing, Michael, because I just remembered when Philip was talking. When you provide immigrants with legal status, it also allows them to buy houses, to buy cars, a lot of things that are very difficult without that legal status. And when you think about all the people that Microsoft brings in, for example, or businesses around the country bring in, those are people that are immediately putting their money into those economies and helping to drive those economies. Yeah.
Is there any legislation now before Congress or support to begin the process of
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for that question. There are a number of pieces of bipartisan legislation that we passed in the last Congress. They did not get passed in the Senate because of the outdated filibuster rule that requires 60 votes in the Senate. But these are bipartisan pieces of legislation around the Dreamers. The Dream and Promise Act was bipartisan, has been reintroduced again. The Farm Worker Modernization Act. We have a big farm worker population in Washington State, California, many other places. These were bipartisan pieces of legislation that we could pass today. Now, the president also sent us a comprehensive immigration reform bill in the first quarter of his presidency, and that lays out the vision for what it would look like to really fix the entire system. We also have a bill around green cards, which I know is very important in H-1B visas, which is very important in our state. So there's a number of different bills, and many of them are bipartisan, but there isn't a desire, unfortunately, on the other side to actually bring them to the floor for a vote. Well, the Senate bill is an interesting case where it was written largely by the second most conservative Republican member in the Senate, Jim Langford, but the minute that it was brought up, the former president said he didn't want to fix the situation at the border. I personally believe you can't fix the situation at the border unless you pass comprehensive immigration reform. But even when you had a bill that Mitch McConnell called the toughest bill on immigration, Republicans refused to bring it up for a vote. And I think it just shows that they're not interested in fixing the problem. But we are, and there are few Republicans that are still with us on this who see their districts deeply benefited by workers from every sector and do want to fix it. And I hope that we can pass something if we have control back in the House, but I hope that the Senate goes with a simple majority so that we can get this issue fixed and it benefits everybody, our economy, our communities, our families. All right, I think we got a wrap for votes, but thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for sharing the contributions of immigrants, and let's go get this done.